Hi, this is Michael Spokane, the leader and the founder of Church Governance Solutions. I want to speak about what pastors need to know better in order to service the people of God properly. What pastors need to know in order to service the church properly. It is very important that pastors get to know some of the things that they need to know better, and therefore we can be able to service the people. Because remember that church is about people. So therefore, there's no way you're going to run a church and ignore the people. There's no way you're going to run a proper church while you're ignoring to service the people better. This is very important, and that is why I'm speaking to men and women of God that are running their own churches, that are having visions and callings of God, and they are running a church and therefore dealing with people. I want to just speak a little bit about what you need to know more so that you can be able to service the people better. The first thing that I want to mention that you need to know is the level of literacy in the community that you're running your church. The level of literacy in the community that you're running a church, because this is very important. When you know the level of literacy, you're going to actually be able to approach and service the people better. Because remember that in a place where people are not educated, you may need to use the language common to the people and be avoiding actually to speak, say, English, for instance, in a community where they are not exposed to English. To speak sometimes at a level of educated people that while you're saving people that may not be educated. And also, it is very important on the other side as well, that if your community is literate, the community is more educated class of people that you are dealing with, there are a level of approach on your teaching that you may need to adjust your presentations based on that. And that is why in places where people are highly educated, you might actually use even computer PowerPoints and so on. It becomes more relevant to do that. But you may arrive in a place whereby you are actually having people that are not literate enough that may find it difficult to even understand your presentation by putting it on PowerPoints and projection and so on. And that's very important. Why we're mentioning that is not to class the people. Why we're mentioning the level of literacy is not to judge people or undermine them. It is basically just for you to understand your community or the congregation that you're dealing with so that you can be able to know the people and approach them appropriately. And you may be able to present to them the gospel much more appropriately with their own way of understanding, at their own level of understanding. That's very, very important. So literacy is therefore important for you to assess that in a community that you're serving. The other thing that you need to know as a pastor is you need to know the average age of your people. Very, very important. It may sound like it is actually petty. It may sound like it is not important, but it's very important because you may be dealing with the elderly, the people of a certain age who may expect you to approach things differently. Because if your church is having an average age of 70, for instance, these are the generation of people that would not dance the way you want them to dance. These are the people that when you address issues, you may need to talk about issues that are relevant to them, issues that may not be relevant to the young people. So therefore, you are going to address issues based on the average age of the people of your church. Let's take an example of a church that is full of the youth, that is full of young people who are actually on social media, who understand social media platforms like TikTok and Twitter, Instagram and Facebook and all those. It will be appropriate for you to actually put your church on those platforms as well, because you'll be communicating to people of the age group of your people. You'll be communicating to the very same people. If you are going to use certain platforms for an average age of older people that may not be even able to access that type of a medium, then you're wasting your time and you are therefore not going to be servicing the people well. This is very important. So therefore, please make sure as a pastor that you are au fait with the average age of your people, or you know the average age of your people, and therefore you can plan how to service the church based on their average age. And that will actually be appropriate for them. They will actually get much more out of how you approach the leading and the servicing of them in the church. And that is very key, that we approach it that way. And I must emphasize that Average Age as well is going to speak to type of topics that we will address. There are those type of topics that may not be appropriate for children. They may not be appropriate maybe for youth. They are actually appropriate for elderly people, and therefore vice versa as well. Those topics or information that you need to teach that may be relevant not to older people but to the youth as well. So that's very important, that when you know the average age, you are therefore going to be able to service the church more appropriately and very well. The other thing that you need to know as a pastor to service your people well is the level of their spiritual growth. Well, when you don't know the level of the spiritual growth of your people, you are going to feed people with bones and meat while they need milk at that particular time, while they're still young to be fed or to be breastfed on milk. And now you are introducing them to solid food. And Paul says that it is very important for you to differentiate so that you know you don't actually give people solid food that are not ready. You're not giving people also milk that are ready now for solid food. So that differentiation is biblical, is very important as well. But as a pastor, it is very important for you to know also that your congregation is growing to a certain level. Because knowing to which certain level that they are grown to, it is going to dictate as well the type of topics that you introduce. There are basic Christian principles that we teach for young people that have just been born again, that are convinced now at this particular time. And in this case, you'll realize that it is very important to identify that these people knows this particular topic and the others don't know. So therefore, when you deal with people that understand a certain topic, you aren't going to bore them if you're going to reiterate on such a topic. Rather deal with people that don't know the particular topic to teach them that particular topic, but that would be actually at the level of the maturity, spiritually, of your people. Based on the maturity of the people, that's the type of sermons that you will preach, the type of teachings that you will do, the type of dealings or managing your own church, whether you're counseling them, you would know how to counsel them as well, because it is going to be dependent fully on the spiritual maturity of your congregation. That's very important, therefore, to know and gauge the level of spiritual maturity before you lead and service your church well. Very, very important. You need also to know the language preference in that particular community. As a church leader or a pastor, it is very important that you know the community where you are and how they speak and what language they speak, so that you can know the preferences of language that you need to address them with, because it is very important, therefore, for you to be addressing them with the right language, for them to be able to understand clearly that which you're teaching about, clearly that which you're talking about, so that they can mature and grow. So therefore, the language preference is very important. You're not going to preach with a language that they don't understand. If you do so, therefore you need to actually get an interpreter that will actually translate what you are saying to the people, so that people can learn and you don't actually teach them amiss. And that's very, very important, because sometimes we're speaking a language that people don't understand. We're missing them. We cannot teach them thoroughly, and they cannot learn anything as well, because we're just not on the level of what they understand. So therefore, it is very important, therefore, that you identify the language of preference, focus on preaching or teaching through that language, and you will be rest assured that people understand. Therefore, they are actually along with you and you're not missing them somewhere. Very, very important that we emphasize the issue of language preferences. For you to service your church better and well as a pastor, you need to know the gifts and the talents that are there in the church for the sake of development of those talents. So therefore, you need to identify the talents, the gifts, spiritual gifts of your people. That's very important, because when you know the congregants, their areas of development, their talents and their gifts, you would know what to sharpen, you would know what to shape within them, and you would know that type of those type of gifts and talents that you need to focus on teaching them and assisting them and counseling them on. And that's very important as well, because when you don't know the gifts and the talents of your people, therefore you cannot know how to develop them. This is very important because when you know the talents, you would actually be able to provide them with platforms where they will practice their gifts. If you are having evangelists in your church, it is going to be very important for you to provide with an outreach programs and platforms as well where they will preach the gospel without fail, because you would actually bring them to a point where they would know that they've got opportunity to go out for open airs and crusades as well, to minister to the people that don't know God as a personal Savior, if that is their gift. So please provide a platform whereby they'll be able to preach to the non-believers out there, and therefore sharpen their gift of evangelism and outreach as well. So very, very important that you know their gifts, you know their talents as well. But it's very important also that you also identify spiritual callings or visions that your people have. Some are called as pastors amongst your congregation. Some are called as prophets in your congregation. So therefore, you're going to need to hone their skills around their callings and visions, so that you'll be able also to expose them to right platforms as well. You may actually get some people that you may know that maybe prophets that will maybe also assist your young prophets in the church by guiding them and leading them, by teaching them as well. Very, very important, because you may be able to organize people that will mentor them, and you'll mentor them appropriately in line with the callings that they have, in line with the visions and callings that they have, because otherwise you're going to be missing them as well. They need to be taught, they need to be developed. So that's very, very important that as a church leader or a pastor, you know what their callings and their visions are, so that can help them in that regard. But also, as a pastor, you need to know the individual potentials as well, just how much potential they have and in which area. And as you do so, you're going to be able to help them as well. When you know this one has got a potential to be a preacher, when you know this one is having a potential to become a businessman, you basically organize them seminars and platforms where they can practice, where they can be taught. You actually organize the mentors as well, as I've said earlier, whereby the mentors can actually assist them and walk the path with them and teach them to become actually very active in that line that they are going to, particularly whether it's business, particularly if it's a preaching ministries as well. But you will be able to assist them when you know their potential. Lastly, you need to know the level of progress made in their lives. Progress financially, progress professionally, progress career-wise, and progress in any way. You need to know how far progress they've made in their lives. So therefore, you'll be able to step in and assist them to shape their progress even further, and make sure that you encourage them in their progress and you teach them to stand firm and become even progressive much more. I want to end up here today. Your host, Maikonas Pokane. Thank you very much for being with us as we teach this topic. Very, very important that pastors know some things that you will be able to service your church better. And please also make sure that you hook up with us on our socials, Facebook pages, Maikonas Pokane, and Church Governance Solutions as a Facebook page. Like those pages. Make sure that you are following us as we are dealing with different topics on these platforms. We've got a YouTube channel as well, Maikonas Pokane, and the other one would be under Young Men Empowerment Forum. So please click those notification buttons, subscribe to these YouTube channels. You will learn out of that, and you will never be the same again, because I know that when you listen to these teachings, your church shall never be the same again. Allow me to check out right here and say, please join us tomorrow once more as we deal with other topic. May the good Lord bless you, and cheers for now.